So I've been seeing a lot of questions and comments on both my channel and other people that I watch and on social media posts from people asking a very similar question based around if you could start over again or do things differently, what's one of the main things you'd change? And I can definitely understand where people are coming from on this. They want to know exactly what they should be doing so they don't make the same mistakes that we've made. Now, I'm in the position where I've been training a long time, roughly 20 years, where I've made a lot of mistakes. And definitely there's a lot to learn from me, at least in my opinion. Not to mention, I'm the person that's gone through a lot of different phases of training because I've had so much time in the gym. My first 5 years were spent really focused around sports-specific training for basketball, followed by about 10 years of futility in bodybuilding and hypertrophy-style training. And the last 5 years and foreseeable future are really based around powerlifting and strength training. Now, that being said, when I first started training, things were a lot different back then. And it really got me thinking, because if I had access to some of the things I have now, or if I had certain goals that I have now back then, I definitely would be further along. But this isn't as easy a question to answer as you might think it is, because it can really depend. And what I really wanted to do was think of something that is really applicable to everybody out there, meaning that I don't want it to be specific only to people that are interested in powerlifting. At the same time, there's other things to consider, like technology, for example, has greatly changed since when I first started lifting. And you might not think that plays a big role, but quite honestly, if I had some of the access to things that people have now, I do think I'd make a lot better progress. Think, for example, if I wanted to log information back then, I had to bring pen and paper to the gym. If I wanted to record myself lifting, I'd have to bring like a cassette recorder type, which is not only very expensive, but not very accessible, not to mention very obtrusive, and just didn't have access to it at a young age. If I wanted to listen to music, I was pretty much forced to listen to what was in the gym, because otherwise I'd have to bring like a Walkman or CD player. If I wanted to get information from somebody, I had to ask someone in the gym or rely on print source materials like Flex Magazine, Muscle and Strength, or if I went to the library, maybe I'd check out Arnold Schwarzenegger's Modern Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. These days, you can do all of that on a simple smartphone, not to mention surf Instagram and get motivation, if you know what I'm saying. So technology definitely has played a role, I believe, but I don't want to really give that answer, because in a couple of years, I'm sure there's going to be more technology that probably would have changed my answer anyway. So I don't want to focus on that. I don't want to focus on anything specific to, let's say, powerlifting again, because maybe you're more interested in bodybuilding or sports specific training and that answer would alienate you. I also want to avoid giving an answer like saying, I wish I had bought squat shoes or a better belt when I first started, because although again, in small instances, it doesn't really mean much, but over the course of 20 years or 2 decades, it can potentially make a difference. But not everyone has the money to spend on those things. So I really wanted to think of an answer that would really encapsulate everybody potentially watching this. And the best answer I could come up with was, I wish I knew better programming back then. Now, don't get me wrong, I did know some programming back then, because again, I would rely on the local gym bro, whoever was good at benching. I'd go up and say, hey, you have a good bench. How do I get a good bench? Or I'd rely on these magazines that I was reading, which, by the way, every single month had a different workout routine that you should be doing. Number one, because they had to fill the pages of their magazine, but also because back then, muscle confusion was a thing. I know, weird, right? So it was very tough to do, because they'd give you an idea of things, but it would be something as far as do this exercise for this amount of sets and this amount of reps, and that was it. And I'd take that and I'd do that, and yes, I would progress, but it wasn't at a very fast rate, or it wasn't at a rate that I was favorable of. And add to that, to compound the things, I started to do my own programming, because I thought I knew was best for me at the time. So I'd make my own routines, whether that be an upper-lower split, a push-pull split, or maybe the good old bodybuilding of chest one day, back one day, arms, shoulders, and maybe if we had time, we'd do legs, but that would just be leg press, and that's another story. I really wish I had the intuition to go ahead and get good programming at the time, but to be honest, it just wasn't readily available. Again, the internet wasn't as popular back then. There wasn't as many free resources out there to connect to your favorite lifter. It was very difficult to do, because in most cases, the only places you could really see them might have been when ESPN would run those World's Strongest Man contests, but these days, everything is a lot more accessible. So for me, programming has made a true difference in my own training, specifically the last 5 years or so, as I've been introduced to great lifters who also give out great free information, but also programming that takes into account things like intensity and volume and different phases of training in order to get the most out of your gains. Because I was at a point, quite seriously, where I thought that my gains and my results and my progress were just kind of tapering off, and that's how they were. I had reached my genetic potential. And to be honest, it was just I had bad programming habits in place, whether that be from myself or just relying on poor sources of information, which I should say are still out there today. So there's still a lot of poor resources out there, but there's a lot of great free programs out there, from Candido to stuff that Eric Blevins is doing to my own coaching services through TSA that I actually pay for. They have free versions as well. There's just so much good stuff out there that it's really kind of inconceivable how people don't take advantage of this. And if you're in the situation where you're looking or struggling for results or progress, you're not happy with what you're doing, take a look at your programming, because chances are that's probably the root cause of your issue. I use a lot of big words, this thing. Inconceivable. Princess Bride, anybody? But anyways, that's the one thing that I would change. And I think that's the best advice I can give you, because regardless if you're watching this now or 20 years in the future, or for some reason you go back in time 20 years, do some Terminator or Back to the Future action, I think that advice is still going to be applicable to everybody. Get good programming early. You'll be happy you did, and it's going to solve a lot of your issues and help you make the progress you wanted to make. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching, and stay big.